like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun. To dream, believe in strength, now I'm the only one. Only one. I was an ordinary boy until I broke the rules, my life destroyed. Life destroyed. Until I walk awake, scream my mind, I shout, the ground shakes. How much can I take? My mind will break. Will it break? Can I take? Can I be your superhero?
All right. I forgot what kind of live I was doing. I messed up and put the attic one up there. I don't know what in the world I was thinking, but this isn't that book. So, um, we're gonna talk about the Gary Brucato book. This is The New Evil. It was written by Gary Brucato and another gentleman. Um, so I hope that you've enjoyed it so far. I kind of fast forwarded through the Mormon portion of it because, to be honest, I'm not very versed on that. And those of you that know me, I don't like to talk on things that I'm not versed on. You know, at least stuff that I haven't really dove into or anything like that. I should be more prepared, but I'm not. I don't know what the heck is wrong with me. There we go. Now we got a little bit more light. So hopefully that helps. Hello, Nina. How you doing? Thank you for being here. Rondé. Nina, you want to come up and help read? Aquaria said she would, but I don't think she's up this late. You know, it is her bedtime, so if you want to come up and help read, you can. What the hell? Where'd my... There we go. Okay. Just let me know. And even though you're commenting in the chat or whatever, I do have to switch tabs, so a lot of times I can't see what you're saying, but you know, just letting y'all know, so I'm not ignoring you. I'm saying hello in the future. That's cool, Nina. I understand it. Keep your head up. You got it. Okay, it says Blaise Pascal, the great French, or no, let's go with category 13. It says an individual ranked in category 13 of the scale will have spent a lifetime feeling inadequate and embittered surrounding some personal shortcomings, such as to the level's playing field, which they perceived as having undetermined their chances and contributed to their unhappiness. Their attitude that if they cannot enjoy life, nobody else should. And that's pretty bad, man. I mean, we talked about this in some other lives, you know. It's kind of like, if I can't enjoy it, you're not going to enjoy it. Hey, Aquarius, you want to read? let me invite you up here because you said you would. At least until you get tired. Well, you know what? The devil doesn't have any hold on you. Just rebuke. Rebuke the devil and everything will be all right. We got your back. There we go, Aquarius. Come on up. I'll let you read from here on out because, it does like what I'll do if I want to speak on a topic on what you're reading, I'll just uh I'll just interrupt you or I'll say, hold on a second, please. I'm at to level life's playing field, which they perceive as having undetermined their chances and contributed to their unhappiness. Their attitude is if they cannot enjoy life, nobody else should. It is not uncommon for individuals in category 13 to display signs of cognitive impairment or psychiatric illness, although this is not uniformly the case. We found an example of this type of offender in Benjamin Nathaniel Smith, born in March of 1978. In the affidavit, hi Aquarius,
Hello, how are you?
doing great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good.
Let me find the book again. Oh, there we are. So, what do you think about this book before I allow you to start reading it? What do you think about it?
I actually think it's a really good book. I think this is a really good. All the books you've been reading have been really good.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I wish I could take credit for their content, but I can't. But thank you for that.
Yeah, I've
So,
had a good time listening to him.
okay. So, if you want to go ahead and start right there where we find an example of this type of offender and go from there.
Okay.
Hey, there's Dr. Gary right there. Gary,
Oh, great. Yeah.
would you
Hello.
like to would you like to come up, sir?
Yeah,
We've
that
been
would be
waiting.
awesome.
We've been waiting for you. There is the link. Yes, because we want to know and how you explain this because obviously you wrote the book. So I'd
Yes, we'd
love to
love for
have
you to
you
come
up.
up. I will
Yes.
jump down if he comes up because I would love to listen.
Me too. I'll be like, okay, Dr.
Um,
Gary, please read. Please read. Oh,
yeah,
okay,
it's
cool.
super.
Then we're gonna do our best to read this and try to give our best impression. If for some reason you want to clarify something that we might get wrong, a little wrong, or out there that we're not representing it the best we can, please correct us. I'm not above that, and I know Aquarius isn't either. So
Not at all.
let's go ahead and start, Aquarius.
Okay, on we find an example of this type of offender in Benjamin Nathaniel Smith, born in March of 1978 in affluent Wilmette, Illinois, where he was also raised. His mother was an attorney and his father was a physician, employed at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Both also sold real estate. As a boy, Smith reportedly played with a crossbow in his family's yard, once firing arrows into a neighbor's fence. A local familiar with him once remarked, "My wife lived in fear of him. She thought he had an evil core, and we both worried about our daughter's safety when he was around. He lived on the fringe and didn't fit in." Another observed, he seemed to harbor intense anger, but it was never, hang on, I couldn't see it, but it was never of a physical.
Nature, yeah. So this is saying that they were afraid of him. So category 13, let me read for Dr. Gary put. He said, category 13 is very interesting because it is the place for people who snap because of losing the one thing that gives them the entire identities. A lot of people in that category are disturbed. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I I always wonder about people who can just snap. I wonder if it's, do you gotta have like mental health or something to do, or can just anybody just snap?
Yeah. I mean, like you just said, people just snap because of losing the one thing that gives them their
Yeah,
identity.
that's crazy.
Many mass murders are in this category. Awesome. Thank you. Continue.
He never lashed out at anybody. He just had an angry look on his face. At school, one of his teachers sensed that Smith was longing for a meaningful connection and invited him to his home to watch movies with him and his wife. Although he had no religious background, Smith considered himself a Muslim for a period, but he ultimately came to feel disappointed and frustrated over his attempts at religiosity. By his final year of high school, he was beginning to harbor hostility toward Jews and had tattooed Sabbath Breaker on his chest. He also felt himself being drawn to the white supremacy movement. Before graduating, Smith did not pose for a yearbook photograph, but provided a quotation attributed to Brutus, the assassin of Julius Caesar: Sic semper tyrannis, thus always to tyrants. The same Latin phrase, which is the state motto of Virginia, was reportedly shouted by John Wilkes Booth as he leapt from the. It stops for me right there. I don't see the next word.
Right, right. Let me see what Dr. Gary said. He says, notice how Smith's identity kept changing. He eventually embraced racism as his identity. Okay.
Right. The presidential booth at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. on April 14th, 1865, just after firing a bullet into the brain of the great emancipator Abraham Lincoln. Smith attended the University of Illinois at Champaign, where he studied
Okay.
agriculture and consumer and environmental science. In 1996, it was alleged that he was peeping at women through a window at a dormitory, as well as inappropriately touching female students. When apprehended by police, Smith identified himself as Erwin Rommel, borrowing the name of the field marshal of the Third Reich, dubbed the Desert Fox. The following year, Smith was accused of possession of marijuana, fighting with other students, and beating his girlfriend. After the latter, he audaciously faxed the young woman in a disclaimer to sign, attesting that he had not been abusive to her. Smith dropped out in 1998, transferring to Indiana University's Bloomington campus, where he switched his academic focus to criminal justice. Reportedly uncomfortable in his
I changed it. New culturally diverse.
new culturally diverse environment. He began reading neo Nazi literature and became a member of the World Church of the Creator, a white supremacist group later known as the Creative Movement. There he devoutly, perhaps fanatically, followed the church's leader, Matthew Hale, who may have become something of a father figure to him. Smith soon came to the attention of police for circulating flyers filled with hateful vitriol toward Jews, African Americans, and Asians. He had also taken to driving down residential streets and tossing small plastic bags from the windows into people's yards containing pamphlets that asserted that whites were being crowded out of their neighborhoods by Jews, blacks, and mud people, a derogatory term he used to refer to Asians. He signed the missives with the pseudonym August Smith, reportedly abandoning the name Benjamin Nathaniel because it might suggest that he was Jewish. He withdrew about $19,000 from a savings account, dropped out of college for good, and devoted himself.
To hell's message.
I'm about
Can you
to
see it?
find.
Can you see it?
Yes, to Hale's message around 1999, Smith moved out of his partner's home and severed ties with them. That same year, Hale, who wished to pursue a career as an attorney, passed his law school exams. But the Illinois State Bar Association called for an ethics hearing related to his openly racist views. On April 11th, Smith testified before the bar regarding what he saw in his leader's sterling character. On July 2nd, Hale was denied a license to practice law on the grounds of gross deficiency in moral character. Apparently enraged by this, 2 days later, Smith loaded up his car with guns and ammunition and embarked upon a 3-day shooting spree that encompassed 2 states. Oh, wow.
Wow. I've never even heard of this case. That
Me
is,
either.
wow. That is something right there.
Yeah, that is crazy.
So
On the
since he wasn't given what he thought he deserved, which is passing the bar, that's a huge accomplishment. But since they didn't allow him to be a lawyer due to his extreme racist views, he, like Dr. Brucato said, his identity was stripped and he turned it into
right.
more, it's wow.
That's wild.
Keep going.
On the evening of July 2nd, 1999, Smith drove through the West Rogers neighborhood of Chicago, this time firing bullets through the open windows of his car. Instead of racist literature, he wounded 9 Orthodox Jews before moving on to the other victims who were targeted because of what he perceived to be their racial, ethnic, and religious identity. As African American Northwestern University basketball coach Ricky Birdsong strolled outside his home in Skokie, Illinois, with his young son and daughter, Smith pulled up alongside them and shot the man to death. The following day, Smith traveled to Urbana and Springfield before reaching Decatur, where he
Hmm.
fired at a black clergyman, leaving him wounded. On Independence Day, Smith drove to Bloomington, Indiana, where he fatally shot Won Jun Yoon, a 26-year-old Korean economics student at Indiana University who had been en route to a church service. Smith fired at but missed 9 other individuals. When police
How
caught up with, sorry,
have
I
you
like lost my place.
you're fine. Have you ever heard of this case? I have
No,
never
I have
heard.
never heard of it. I
Dr.
didn't
Gary
even
says
recognize the name.
because then going down in history in this way becomes the identity. That's the purpose of many assassins. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Now I see why they would compare him to John Wilkes Booth then.
Yes.
That makes sense. Yeah. When
I've
police caught
never
up with
heard of Go
did
ahead.
you sorry. When police caught up with the killer, he engaged them in a high-speed chase on an Illinois highway before the car careened into a metal post. Smith had shot himself twice in the head. Still alive, he pressed his firearm against his heart and pulled the trigger, which finally ended his life. That's what a lot of people do is they end their own life just like Dr. B said because they're going to make themselves known for something. So we did all this and now I'm just going to die
Yeah.
and not have to deal with the consequences. Oh, wow.
That is intense, right?
It really is. He said, we ain't seen nothing yet.
All right. Keep going.
We will never fully understand Smith's precise state of mind before and during his 3-day trail of murder. It appears that in the white supremacy movement and Hale's organization, a young man with a history of deep-seated rage, existential confusion, and feelings of inadequacy believed that he had at last found a sense of personality identity in some place that he felt like a home to him. Moreover, the church's principles might have become a way of inverting the social order, such that Smith would no longer feel invisible and impotent, but rather superior to those around him. Its teachings may have unwittingly allowed him to feel justified with regard to intense hatred and rage, which initially had nothing to do with his religious or racial beliefs, lending those feelings shape and purpose. He could project blame for his personal failings onto other people as unseen them. It is possible that he viewed through the same distorted lens Hale's inability to acquire a law license, reasoning that if it were not for the African Americans, Jews, and Asians who incurred the group's hatred by simply existing, his leader,
Would have been.
his leader would
Good.
have been able to enter into practice. It is intriguing, however, that in his random targeting, members of certain racial groups. While driving across Illinois and Indiana, Smith does seem to have honed in on people who were walking along, surrounded with family and friends or at school or heading into our out of places of worship. One wonders if beneath his anger and supremacist views, he did not feel profoundly inferior and intensely envious of those types of people who love and are loved. Who knows what it is to belong in a family or a traditional social setting? How symbolic, then, that a man who might have wished to convince himself that he had no longing for any of it, for giving and receiving love within a traditional family or circle of friends, would end his life by destroying his very heart.
Oh,
Wow,
wow.
this is really good.
And you know it's intense when people don't really look at these cases in a way where they do have potential reasoning behind them. Most of the time we hear on YouTube, well, this was a good person, this had that, but a lot of the times we don't get the background information to really describe, kind of like this case right here.
Right, right.
You
To know
know,
what's going on up there.
right? Exactly. If you want to continue on,
Yes. The reader might be surprised to learn of our opinion that Ed Gein, mentioned in our introduction, also belongs in Category 13. The crimes we are about to describe, including murder, grave robbing, and the transformation of the skins and body parts of corpses into clothes and various household objects, were certainly gruesome and unfathomable, depraved. The case gives us an opportunity, however, to drive home the point that placement in the scale is primarily dependent upon an individual's specific motivation and the degree of immorality associated with that driving factor. Geen cannot be ranked at the scale's lower end because, as we shall see, there is no evidence that his actions were impulsive in nature, related to situational stressors.
okay.
There's also, sorry, this book
You
is,
have you heard of Ed Gein?
yes. What?
Yes.
Yes. Wasn't he the clown? No, no, that's Gacy.
Yes, Ed Gein was the one who would wear the people's
Oh,
skin.
their skin. That's
There was a
right.
movie. There was a movie they made which reference to that. I think it was Silence of the Lambs, right? Something
Yes,
like that.
Silence of the Lambs,
Okay. Yeah.
where he had him down on the hole and would reach stuff down to him in the basket and stuff.
Yeah. Put the lotion in the basket. Yeah.
Yeah, it puts the
Yeah.
lotion on its skin. That's so
Yeah.
weird.
So like this said,
Oh, he
um
was the basis for Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
oh,
Okay.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Oh, okay. I was wrong then. Okay.
Yeah,
Texas
I wasn't
Chainsaw
sure.
Massacre and Psycho. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay,
thanks for
gotcha.
correcting us.
Yes, no problem with that at all. Go ahead.
The reader might be surprised to learn of our opinion that Ed Gein, mentioned in our introduction. Oh, I read that. Sorry. The crimes
That's
we are
fine.
about to describe, including murder. I read that. Where was I?
Okay, there's also an indication.
Oh, I'm at the bottom. There's also no indication that he was killing primarily to eliminate people in the way or for personal power. Moreover, designation cannot be higher. As per the scale, higher rankings involve killing for more overt sexual gratification, to subjugate or terrorize, or following sadistic torture. Instead, it appears that Gein's crimes, like Benjamin Nathaniel Smith's, were driven by anger and resentment surrounding a sense of inadequacy and a disturbed notion that if he could achieve some end or right some wrong, he could resolve underlying feelings of self loathing. Okay. In both cases, the crimes were part of searching for personal identity and were set in a play by a last straw event that focused underlying anger and antisocial personality features. This is the essence of Category 13. We should also note that, in addition to possible psychopathic character traits, it is distinctly plausible that both men were at least sometimes psychotic, that is to say, partially operating under false beliefs, hallucinations, or disorganization of thought processes, a concept we will discuss at some length when we arrive at Category 20. For
Okay,
now.
I have a question for you, Dr. Gary. So these two individuals that we're discussing right here, most of their antisocial beliefs, was that fueled by the mental illness? Is that what you were saying here, or am I getting that wrong? What do you think, Aquarius? You think that's what was being said, or no?
I'm I don't want to comment on that because I always think that it always has something to do with mental health.
Right. Okay. We'll just.
Sure.
He says in category 13, you have a mixture. Okay. Okay. Good deal. Because I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. I mean, it's going to take me more than one time going through this book to really understand it wholeheartedly because there's so much information and it is just like, wow, it just
It
wows your mind.
it really does. It's a lot of information. So 12 gauge, have you read this without like with us?
No, this is the first time I'm reading it or,
Oh, okay.
hearing
Awesome. So
about
you're
it.
as surprised as we are.
Yeah, that's why it's blowing my mind right now. You're inadequate and strange, and it gives you a particular focus to rage. They
Yeah.
teach the book in a lot of colleges. No, this is my first time, and I heard you on the interview room with Chris McDonough, and you had the book and you were showing it, and I thought, well, you know what? I want to go buy that book and read it because it sounds so interesting, and I've done a couple lives on it, and it's really freaking amazing.
Absolutely. You
It's
have done a
amazing.
few lives on it and reading this book. I'm glad you're reading it with us because it's really good.
So go ahead and continue.
I'm at for now, right?
Yes.
Okay. For
Okay.
now, we will say that if Geen were exclusively acting within the context of psychosis, affecting his ability to distinguish right from wrong, this might reduce his moral culpability and thus the evil of his actions. As we shall see, however, he displayed a complex blend of both psychotic and psychopathic features. Edward Theodore Geen was born in August of 1906 in La Crosse, Wisconsin. His parents were farmers who relocated the family to Plainfield when Geen was a boy. His father, an abusive alcoholic who struggled to maintain regular employment, also worked as a tanner insurance salesman and carpenter, leaving his mother to look after Geen and a brother and to make the various decisions of the household. Geen's mother despised his father. She was a highly religious Lutheran, speaking sternly against premarital sex and telling the boys that all women except herself were whores and instruments of Satan. During daily Bible readings, she concentrated on Old Testament passages concerning death, murder, and divine punishment. Geen's mother chased off any visitors she felt might negatively influence her sons. Geen was shy and peculiar in school, sometimes observed laughing to himself. He was not permitted to befriend his classmates at the threat of harsh punishment by his mother. Despite these social and family difficulties, he was generally a good student who especially enjoyed reading. I wonder if Dr. B is still in here, but I'm wondering if is that part of maybe not even mental health, but just being raised like that by your mother or some, I mean, is that like some of the problem that like made him this way? Just wondering. Sorry.
I mean, it does have a an inkling, I guess. It says Gein's mother chased off any visitors she felt might negatively influence her sons.
Right. And he wasn't permitted to have any friends in class and that all women were whores except for her. Li-
Right.
That's crazy.
But how much of it is religiously driven as well? Like
Exactly. That's what it said.
sometimes
His mom was
people,
super religious.
yeah, sometimes people influence their children based on a religious preference that they carry, and I mean, sometimes that doesn't work for some. It sometimes warps their reality at times. I would think.
Okay.
He
As
says,
you
as you'll see, his mother became his entire identity, and he could not handle losing her, so he became her. Oh,
Okay, so Psycho, I knew what movie the
yeah,
Chainsaw Massacre
Psycho.
was. Psycho, isn't that one about? Norman Bates or whatever, and his mother,
Yes.
and
Yes.
okay, okay. Oh wow. When
Wow. This is amazing. Keep going.
Okay. When Geen was 34, his father died of heart failure related to his hard drinking, and he and his brother began taking up odd jobs to make ends meet, typically as handymen. In 1944, the two were burning away marsh vegetation on the property, which Geen would explain got out of control. His brother was later found dead, supposedly from smoke inhalation, but the circumstances were suspicious. The brother's head showed signs of blunt force trauma, and no burn marks could be found. Some question exists of whether Geen murdered his siblings and started the fire to mask a jealousy driven fledgling murder that would have made him the sole object of his mother's attention following the death of his father.
Okay, hold on a second. Hey, Dr. B, would this coincide with the Oedipus complex? Would that have anything to do with that as well, possibly? You
Okay.
know, where you want to kill your father because you want your mother all to yourself type
Right.
thing, you know? Okay, keep going.
One wonders how many times his mother had read him the
The
story
story.
Cain and Abel from the fourth chapter of the book of Genesis, in which Cain murders his younger brother, who he felt had proved the more beloved in a triangulated relationship with God. Not long following the tragedy, Gein's mother suffered a stroke, rendering her paralyzed and in need of her remaining son's constant care. She had a second stroke in 1945 and died shortly thereafter. Who had quite literally lost his own friend in the world, took up a hammer. I lost my place. Oh, and some nails and sealed up his mother's bedroom. The living room and upstairs and downstairs parlors like sepulchres, leaving everything just as she had left it. These rooms remained immaculately tidy while the remainder of the house fell into utter disarray. Geen passed the time reading about death, cannibalism, South. I can't see that word because the 12 gauge is in the way.
Okay, where are you at?
South something headhunters.
Oh, South Seas.
Okay, South Seas headhunters and Nazi concentrating concentration camp experiments. Okay. From the time of his boyhood, Geen had always been uncertain of his gender identity, with hopes of following in the footsteps of pioneering transsexual Christine Jorgensen and undergoing sex reassignment. However, in addition to the high cost of the procedure, he was terrified by the thought of the castration of his penis. This led Geen to contemplate how he might turn female without having to tackle these challenging obstacles. His solution was truly the stuff of nightmares. Oh, wow.
God. Wow.
That is wild. I was reading what Dr. B said.
Yeah.
If he had sex with the victims as part of his schizophrenia, he wasn't especially interested in sex. So weird.
So he was worried about the castration of his penis,
Yes,
but he was wondering how he might turn female.
right.
Wow. Keep going.
Okay. Between the ages of 41 and 48, Geen broke into the local cemeteries by night, dysenterying and prying open an estimated 40 coffins. Sometimes he left with entire corpses, which he would, on rare occasion, return to their place of rest. In other instances, he removed various body parts that met his fancy. He claimed to be assisted for a period by a developmental disabled man named Gus, who served as sort of a
Igor.
To his Dr. Frankenstein. When
Yeah.
this Ali pa- Ali passed away, Geen continued these nocturnal raids on his own. Once back at home, he would set to work embellishing the various rooms using skull caps as bowls during meals. Oh my God. Upholstering furniture with skins, which were also used to fashion lampshades and wastebaskets, mounting skulls on bedposts and creating objects from bones, decorating a necklace with tongues, crafting mobiles out of lips, noses, and labia, making gloves and leggings from flesh, and concocting a belt bedecked with severed nipples. Wow.
Wow.
He claimed to do all this in part to provide company for the spirit of his mother in order to transform himself at will into a female. Geen would don the scalp and face peeled from a woman's corpse and an elaborate vest to which he had attached breast and a vagina removed from corpses. Oh, the latter resting just above his loins. He found contentment for a while dancing in this outfit beneath the moon in the privacy of his backyard. Wow. He, I mean, he's
Wow.
just out here dancing naked in other people's skin in the backyard.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Wow. He would later admit that
While
he,
pretending to be his mother.
wow, when dressed in his female suit, a fact that made him the basis for Norman Bates and Robert Bloch's 1959 thriller novel Psycho, subsequently adapted by Joseph Stefano for Alfred Hitchcock's classic film version released the following year. No, I did not know that Ed Gein was the one based off Psycho. I just didn't know this case because I'm just mind blown right now.
No, I know, me too. And it
Uh,
helps with Dr. B being in the chat explaining
yes,
it to us.
explain it all to us.
I
Yes,
mean, that way we're getting the general information out there that is not, alleged or speculated. This is his work. So therefore, this is his words. He's
absolutely.
able to speak on his behalf. That's awesome. I'm glad he's in here.
Yes, me as well. Where am I at? Note that we have no
No,
indication.
yeah.
Okay. Note that we have no indication that the butchering or wearing of skins provided Geen perverse sexual gratification, at least on a conscious level. He also denied ever engaging in necrophilia, once remarking that corpses smelled too bad. But he's wearing their skin. Okay. Okay. By 1954, abusing already deceased bodies was no longer enough for Geen. In early December of that year, 51-year-old Mary Hogan disappeared from a tavern she managed in the town of Pine Grove. Police found an overturned chair, a pool of blood, and a spent .32 caliber pistol cartridge that 3 years later would be matched to a gun recovered from Geen's home. Then on November 16, 1957, 58-year-old Bernice
Warden.
Warden similarly vanished, leaving behind only a trail of blood. Here it led outside to where the body had evidently been loaded into a vehicle and driven off by the perpetrator. The woman's son recalled that Geen had once expressed romantic interest in his mother. He also recalled Geen speaking to her just the day before about wishing to purchase some antifreeze. When a sales receipt for the product was found inside the store, investigators paid a visit to Geen's farm. What they encountered there would shake and change them for the remainder of their day.
Oh my
Oh,
God, I can't imagine going to that farm and finding all that stuff. You know what I mean?
right, absolutely. I'm
God.
gonna I'm gonna take a I need a minute. I need a drink or something. Now I see why you be getting thirsty and stuff when you're
Yes,
eating for so long. Your mouth
go
gets
ahead.
dry.
Yes, yes, go ahead and get a drink. Um, I'll keep reading while you're taking a drink. Just let me know when you come back.
All right,
In a shed,
thanks.
in a shed near Gein's home, Warden hung upside down from the rafters, decapitated with her genitals carved away and the innards gutted, much the way one hangs and eviscerates a deer carted home from a hunt. Her heart was found in a plastic bag in front of a stove in the house, and her head found in a burlap sack, had reportedly been transformed into a macabre decoration in twine attached to nails driven into her ears. Her organs were stored in a box in a corner. Mary Hogan's flayed face was found in a paper bag, and masks fashioned from other women's faces were found elsewhere in the home. In a cardboard drum, 10 heads were discovered. I have a question, Dr. B, if you're still here. Why would if he didn't want his mother to be gone and he kind of kept her identity, how was he doing so with these women's faces and stuff like that. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah.
Because I mean that's blowing my mind right now. It's like 9 vulvae were found in a shoebox, and a pair of lips were observed dangling from the drawstring of a window shade. Police also recovered 4 noses, female fingernails, and a corset made from the skinned torso of an unknown woman. Geen confessed to the murders of Hogan and Worden, along with his long history of violating graves. He was able to recall in vivid detail which coffins were left empty and which were not. It was never clarified whether he had murdered his brother in the so-called accidental marsh fire. There was additional question raised about whether Geen was responsible for the disappearance of a man named Travis and his male companion on a hunting trip, or 2 missing girls, 15-year-old Evelyn Hartley and 8-year-old Georgia Jean Weckler. Although the vulvae of the 2 young women were found in his home, these could not be positively identified. Geen would never conclusively link to any of these other cases. That
Wow.
is intense.
It really is. You want me to go from January?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. In January of 1958, Geen was deemed incompetent to stand trial and sent to Central State Hospital in Waupun, Wisconsin. Proceedings against him were held a decade later. He was found guilty but insane and sent back to Waupun. He died of liver and respiratory failure related to cancer at Mendota Mental Health Institute in 1984, aged 77 years. Keene's aim seemed to have been related to dealing with the feeling of insecurity, guilt, and self loathing surrounding his gender identity, generated by his domineering mother's religious zealotry. As to whether Geen's mind was completely aberrant, it should be noted that he was careful to only raid cemeteries and wear his female costume in the dead of night to keep his crimes a secret from virtually everyone, except for a developmentally disabled man who posed little threat of blowing his cover, and to never let anyone see the decor of objects he had fashioned out of corpses. If he did in fact murder his brother, he also took steps, admittedly unconvincing ones, to conceal the crime. Additionally, in creating his bizarre objects d'art, Geen demonstrated ingenuity and technical skill, which were not suggestive of disorganization, but rather frightening detachment from the reality that his materials were the remnants of human beings. One might speculate about whether he had ever observed his father during his days as a tanner, matter of factly working with the skins of animals and turning them into eye catching articles of clothing and other items. Much is made of the killer's desire to impersonate or even transform into his deceased mother. But in working with skins, it is plausible that he was also incorporating some small aspect of his father's identity.
Okay.
Question: is a tanner the same as those people who stuff the animals? What are those called?
Ta- Taxidermist?
Yeah, is that the same thing?
Yes. Okay. He says, remember, for him, all women were his mother. Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't know where I'm at. At any rate,
At any rate, yes.
various psychiatric
Disabled. Hold
disabled
on.
man
Hold
there
on.
it
I
is.
didn't. Evaluations.
Evaluations of Geen interpreted him as displaying both psychopathic personality features and schizophrenia, consistent with the way we have understood him here. Furthermore, Geen exhibited a complex blend of affection, rage, and envy toward women, clearly shaped by his relationship with his mother, who, despite her abuses and manipulations, quite literally meant the world to him. After her death, his mind gave way to his bizarre fantasy of transformation. This may have represented a primitive interjection or incorporation of a key figure in his life, the loss of whom his brittle psyche simply failed to tolerate. In this, we see an attempt to deny his mother's death altogether, further manifested by sealing up rooms that reminded him of her. The
Well,
ultimate in Geen's
that makes sense, because if you're denying that that person who's that special to you has passed away, you don't want anything to remind you of the fact that she's no longer there.
That they're
So
not there anymore.
right,
Exactly.
right. So he was keeping, I guess, her memory alive by wearing the skin and the transformation. I might be off base there, but hopefully one day Dr. Brucato will be up here to clarify anything that I've misspoken on
I
because
know.
I
I
I,
can't wait.
I am loving this book, and it's there's nothing in it that's too tragic for me. I can take all this. He says one of the parts of the book that made a big splash is the forensic field is coming up, where my research partner Ann Burgess and my co-author Mike Stone and I established the definition of dismemberment and mutilation, now widely accepted even in Wikipedia. That is awesome.
Yeah, it really is. That's amazing.
Well, let's keep reading.
In this, we see an attempt to deny his mother's death altogether. Oh no, I read that. The ultimate in Gein's refusal to accept the reality of death came with displaying corpses or parts thereof in various parts of his home, whereby the deceased were suddenly alive again, the links of their new lives now completely under his control. We trust that this picture of the
I'm kind of lost. Are you there?
yeah, I need you to turn a page.
Oh, okay. My bad. My bad. I was trying to find where we were at.
It's
Okay.
okay. The
Okay.
so-called butcher of Plainfield makes plain at the possible cost of sleep and appetite why his various crimes warrant placement in category 13 of the graduations of evil scale. Cons-
Considerations. Considerations when ranking mutilation and dismemberment with the graduation of evil scale. Oh, this is getting good. Go ahead. Are you there? Where'd you go? Okay, I'll continue to read while she comes back. One of the more unusual aspects of the Gein case is the element of dismembering and mutilating disinterred corpses to create household items and articles of clothing, which included the incorporation of various people's skins into his infamous woman suit. It should be noted that the words dismemberment and mutilation have hitherto been poorly distinguished, such that they are often used interchangeably in both popular and academic parlance, including in some dictionary definitions. Thus, when writing this book, we work with forensic researcher Dr. Ann W. Burgess, co creator of the widely used Crime Classification Manual, to attempt to establish proper distinction between these terms. It was our consensus that dismemberment might be the best conceptualized as involving the entire removal, by any means, of a large section of the body of a living or dead person, specifically the head, also termed decapitation, arms, hands, torso, pelvic area, legs, or feet. Mutilation might be defined as the removal or irreparable disfigurement by any means of some smaller portion of one of these larger sections of a living or dead person. The latter would include castration, removal of the penis, evisceration, removal of the internal organs, and flaying, the removal of the skin. It would also include cases in which corrosive acid is thrown in somebody's face, a crime generally committed by males who aim to harm the physical appearance of the females who have rejected their romantic advances. Thus, removing a whole hand would constitute dismemberment, while removing or damaging a finger would be mutilation. Decapitation of a full head would be dismemberment, while removing or damaging a part of the face would be mutilation. Removing a whole torso would be dismemberment, while removing or damaging a breast or the organs contained within the torso would be mutilation. Okay, that makes a lot of sense because in one of the cases that I talk a lot about, as far as the Idaho 4 case, they didn't go into and I don't know if you can talk about it or not, Dr. B, but they didn't go into the descriptions as far as whether there was any kind of what did I just say? Mutilation. It was just spoken that there was huge tears and huge wounds. They didn't really go that deeply, so um it says while the reader might envision that dismemberment and mutilation would automatically be associated with some high ranking on the gradations of evil scale, the matter is actually a complicated one, since the motives we have found for these decidedly disturbing actions are in fact rather varied. For instance, with regard to mutilation involving removal of the skin, it is critical to distinguish between cases in which victims were flayed while dead or still living. Indeed, flaying a victim while alive, an almost unimaginable cruelty, has a long history as an extreme method of torture, especially throughout medieval Europe and among the ancient Assyrians and Chinese. For instance, three Chinese emperors of the 3rd through 6th centuries, Gao Hang, Sun Ho, and Fu Shang, were infamous for having criminals' faces removed as a severe punitive action. It is also maintained that Saint Bartholomew, one of the 12 disciples of Christ, was flayed alive before being crucified, and he can be seen in Michelangelo's The Last Judgment, draping his own sad-eyed skin over the cloud on which he is perched. Death by this means is typically due to blood loss or loss of other fluids, low body temperature, shock, or infection, and can occur hours to days after the removal of the skin. A rare pre-19th century case involving flaying of the living victims for private psychosexual purposes is Countess Elizabeth Bathory de Aced, a Hungarian noblewoman of the 16th and 17th centuries, believed to have tortured and killed hundreds of female victims. The early female serial killer enjoyed flaying young virgins in cages suspended over razor-sharp spikes and forcing them to eat bits of their own skin. In addition to the variety of other horrendous abuses, death was followed by the butchering and burning of corpses and bathing in the woman's blood in an effort to enhance the beauty of her own flesh. I wonder if that worked. I wonder if that actually worked. That all falls under mutilation. Okay. Thank you, sir. That's what I thought, but I wanted to ask you because I wasn't really certain on that. um, Arguably, the most horrendous example of a modern murder involving the flaying of a living victim is that of a white supremacist cult leader, Michael W. Ryan, who abused and killed Luke Stice, the 5-year-old son of one of his followers, reputedly as punishment for the child expressing doubt about the existence of God. After writing 666 on the boy's forehead, he forced the child's father to beat, whip, and sexually assault him and another agnostic cult member, 26-year-old James Them. Ryan then shoved the child into a cabinet, causing a fatal blow to the head, and compelled the father and Them to dig the boy's grave. Ryan proceeded to torture Them for days. The victim was chained up in a hogshed and shot in the face before being forced, while bleeding, to have intercourse with a goat. A shovel handle marked up like a ruler was repeatedly forced into his rectum by a group of Ryan's Confederates. Reaching a depth of 2 feet, it ruptured the victim's rectal wall. This was followed by severe whippings. The fingers of one hand were shot off with a pistol, and his left arm was broken. It was only then that Them was partially flayed alive with a razor blade and a pair of pliers. As he did not die from the torment, his legs were shattered with wooden boards, and Ryan jumped up and down on his chest until Them at last succumbed. The killer was sentenced to death for these atrocities, but after 30 years in prison, died of natural causes. What is illustrated by this ghastly case is that when flaying is done to a living person, it constitutes unfathomable torture and will almost invariably warrant a ranking of Category 22, the highest level of the gradations of evil scale. As we gradually make our way toward areas of the scale in which we begin to encounter the unspeakable horror of torture-based crimes, we must also remember the impact something like flaying would have upon a victim's loved ones, who will have to hear about and envision the slow and brutal death, or perhaps even encounter the mutilated body. This all serves to add to the overall evil of the act. You're sure right. You sure are right. That is evil in so many regards, Dr. B. That is so evil. That is wow. In other cases, as with Geen, the flaying of a corpse is of a corpse with that there is no pain infliction involved. In the various incidents of this type we have examined, the perpetrators were suffering from serious psychiatric illness, or else persons who killed and flayed in the context of severe maltreatment and trauma, whose rage toward the abuser burned on long past the person's demise. In a particularly bizarre example of the latter, in 2012, 24-year-old Jeremiah Berry was allegedly raped by his father, who claimed God had commanded that Berry undergo a sex change to become his wife. Berry in turn shot his father to death, dismembered him with an axe, and carefully removed the skin with a knife, which was subsequently fed to wild coyotes. The body parts were encased in concrete. Despite the gruesomeness of removing a dead victim's skin in this matter, acts of this nature are generally scored lower on the gradations of evil scale, perhaps at level 6, where we see impetuous, hot-headed violence from people who lack psychopathic traits, or Category 13, where a rageful, insecure, and possibly disturbed individual with some psychopathic qualities commits violence with a degree of malice aforethought. Similarly, the dismemberment of victims, also seen in the Geen case, is yet another terrible action that seems as if it would automatically merit a high ranking on the gradations of evil scale, but which in fact may not, depending upon a perpetrator's specific motivation and whether or not the victims were alive or dead at the time. As we shall see as we progress along the scale, particularly as we turn to part 2 of this book, dismemberment of corpse may be for a wide array of purposes, most commonly the practical objective of more readily disposing of a corpse to conceal evidence of a homicide. In other cases we have reviewed, some of which we will review in the pages to come, dismemberment of one deceased victim represented mental disorganization, overkill of objects of extreme hatred, a precursor to cannibalism, or part of a psychological thrill, sometimes followed by the retention of heads or other body parts as trophies or for perverse sexual purposes. Does this get into the Dahmer type situation, Dr. B? Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good though. Yeah, the link is here. Let me put it back up here if you don't have it. He says all over the map in terms of order. Okay. I was just wondering, as far as the cannibalism part and keeping of the trophies, like, didn't Dahmer keep like skulls in his um freezer, stuff like that? Okay, let me see where I was at. When we see removal of the limbs of a living victim, a thankfully rare event in peacetime, this is nearly always part of an intentionally prolonged and brutal murder that warrants a high ranking of the scale, involving protracted torture. Decapitation of a living victim is somewhat more complex matter. In some instances, the beheading is expeditious, involving no sadistic prolongation of suffering. In others, this may be painfully slow, performed with a blunt or small instrument. If the latter is carried out with the intention of inflicting psychological and physical pain, a higher gradation of evil scale making would be required to capture the element of torture. Category 14. Category 14 is the most common ranking for killers on the gradations of evil scale. Although murder is not required for this designation, it contains a variety of ruthlessly self-centered psychopaths, unlimited in their willingness to cheat and steal to meet their respective personal ends. They're thieves, schemers, and confidence tricksters, sometimes remarkably adept at mimicking sincerity and trustworthiness in order to defraud others. Their plots are often mind-boggling in their ingenuity, and they experience no compunction about taking days, weeks, months, or even years to build the relationships necessary to bring them to successful completion. Now that is scary. That is scary right there. Like, they take their time at getting you to build a relationship with them. Dahmer is a 22. Okay. Because his motivations were torture, keeping people around forever somehow under total control. Gotcha. So this individual right here is very methodical, very very patient, very able to just kind of deceive and kind of be the chameleon as long as they got to be in order to get what they want. It says, indeed, these skills often allow them to slip seamlessly through life, evading suspicion and apprehension by police, at least for a considerable period. When Category 14 types commit murder, it is purely to achieve some practical self-serving end. This is the type of offender who unfeelingly shoots a security guard because it is necessary to gain access to a safe, or who heads to the altar with a well-heeled victim who is then quickly eliminated, resulting in a financial windfall. We often encounter this brand of psychopath in cinema and literature, since their diabolical charms and self-absorption make them ideal archetypical villains. Of course, their real-life counterparts are often far more menaced or nuanced and complicated. Of note, it is not uncommon for people ranked in Category 14 to employ the assistance of weaker-willed allies who recognize their true natures but feel curious loyalty or even affection for them. Such allies are sometimes manipulated with fear of harm to themselves or loved ones and are capable of killing if the dynamic is adequately powerful. If lacking psychopathic traits, such accomplices would likely fall into Category 3 of the gradations of evil scale. I need to go back and print out all the gradations and their definition. That way, when I'm reading this, then I can remember exactly what type different ones are. You know, this is pretty good stuff right here. A fascinating case we would place here is that of Sante Kimes, born Sandra Louise Singers in Oklahoma City in 1934. She was the third of four children to an East Indian father and an Irish mother of partial Dutch descent. The family relocated to Southern California in the late 1930s, after which her father abandoned the family and her mother felt compelled to resort to prostitution to help with mounting expenses. The children were placed in orphanages and foster homes. In watching her mother go down this path, Kimes may have come to believe that it is acceptable to resort to immoral or illegal activities to satisfy one's personal needs, amounting to little more than trying to survive unfavorable circumstances. For a period of time, Kimes wandered the streets of Los Angeles. She was reportedly sexually abused by a number of adults around this period and was once arrested for stealing food. When she was in the seventh grade, Kimes was adopted by a couple who changed their name to Sandra Chambers and who purchased a new home in Carson City, Nevada. There, Kimes earned moderately good grades, blossoming into a brunette beauty. By late adolescence, she was a cheerleader and sang in her high school's glee club when not flirting with a number of boys. When her birth mother popped up looking to take her back to California, Kimes flatly refused. It was also during this period that she first took to shoplifting and using her adoptive father's credit card without his knowledge. 3 months after graduating, Kimes married her high school sweetheart, Lee Powers, but divorced him for unclear reasons after several months. At 22, she married another high school boyfriend, Edward Walker, with whom she had a son, Kent Walker. She changed her name to Sante Chambers in 1960. Around this time, it came to her attention that she bore a striking resemblance to the actress Elizabeth Taylor, which whom she sometimes shamelessly signed autographs as a star. She also began using the attention she garnered from men to her advantage, occasionally taking money in exchange for sex, just as her mother had done decades before. Khan gradually built up her skills as a con artist and thief, and over two decades burned down a number of homes she had acquired in order to cash in on insurance claims. In 1965, she managed to charm an automobile dealer into letting her test drive a car alone and simply never brought it back to the showroom. She then tried to beguile the police officer who arrested her a long while later, audaciously claiming she was still test driving it. She was ultimately charged with 17 counts of grand theft after racking up $20,000 in debt, using multiple credit card accounts obtained by way of a long list of aliases. Arrested for theft again, the following year she pled guilty and received 3 years probation, but went right on scheming and swindling. She and her second husband divorced in 1968. In the early 70s, Kimes met motel tycoon Kenneth Kimes. A decade later, he became her third husband when their son, Kenneth Kenny Kimes Jr., was 6 years of age. It was then that she adopted the last of her many names, Sante Kimes. From her earliest days, Kenny was taught by his mother to lie and steal on her behalf, and during his college days, they were suspicious, never confirmed, that they were having incestuous relations. In the meantime, the wealthy family owned homes in Las Vegas, California, Hawaii, and the Bahamas. Kimes and her husband began trotting around the globe to address American civil rights groups about patriotism, raking in money by peddling U.S. flags to schools. In order to acquire an official government sanction, they met with First Lady Pat Nixon and inveigled themselves into a 1974 party at Blair House where they chatted with Vice President Gerald R. Ford about their work. Well, let me take a breather right quick. Let me see what the chat is saying. Okay, he says, yes, the schemers in this category kill to get rid of witnesses or after robbery. It's all business for them, no feelings. Oh boy, says Sante Kimes. I'm reading the graduations while you're reading. Psychopaths often have many marriages. That's good to know. I never knew that. I'm still pretty young in this, Dr. B. I'm a therapist by trade, but I've dealt on the other side of the criminal aspect. I've mostly dealt with the substance abuse and criminality part of it. But as far as the law enforcement side, which I'm, almost done with my criminal justice bachelor's, um, that's why I'm intrigued by this side because I want to learn as much as I can on different variations, not just one type. And this book outlines a lot of different aspects of different ingenuity that these people have and how it's not so cut and dry. Many times some of my viewers, some of the people in chat and some of the people on YouTube, they make it seem like it's so cut and dry. There's no way this could have happened because of this. So this plus this equals this. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm enjoying reading this book because um, it just outlines so many different outcomes. Thank you for being here once again. Their success prompted them to continue to crash events at embassies and elsewhere until their pair's chicanery came to light. Kimes and her husband were arrested on slavery charges in 1985. She had been making the rounds of various homeless shelters to identify undocumented immigrants whom she forced to work as servants in her family's home under the threat of deportation. She was incarcerated until 1994 while her husband raised their son and underwent treatment for alcohol abuse. Then, when Kimes lost her husband to a sudden heart attack in 1995, she was more distressed about not being included in his will than she was about his demise. She made up her mind to simply conceal any evidence of his passing, forging the deceased's name on checks and legal documents to blow through the millions of dollars he had left behind. Kimes would therefore continue her criminal career in tandem with her son, pulling cons and amassing cars and other assets by passing rubber checks, earning them the nickname Mommy and Clyde from the one journalist. They callously did away with several people who got in the way of plans or posed risk to her freedom, including David Kasdan, a business associate who figured out that she had a notary forge his name on a $280,000 mortgage and threatened to expose her. In 1998, she had her son shoot him in the back of the head and leave his body in a dumpster at a Los Angeles airport. Okay, and this is where I'm going to stop for the night. I usually do an hour, and you know. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dr. Brucato, would some of the traits can be noticed in their youth? And he says, yes, conduct disorder generally predates antisocial personality disorder. Great job, Gage. Thank you. Dr. B, I don't know if you followed my page very long, but I have an individual that comes on my panel. Her name is Dr. Vona, and she said that she knows you due to a dissertation page or paper that she wrote. So I don't know if you remember her, but I was trying to get in touch with her to see if she'd come up, but I was unable to do so. That's why you need to stick to credentialed and experienced people when choosing shows. There's so much misinformation. You're right. That's why I sought you out, because I like the way that you present things, and I love the way that you interacted with Chris. So hopefully this is the beginning of something awesome that you can, kind of mentor me or something, or, just come on my panel and talk about your books and stuff, because I have a lot of subscribers that want to learn the real deal. They don't like the speculation. They don't like this is what could have been, would have been, blah, blah, blah. And what I heard from you on Chris's channel, you're very informative and you're very clear on how you speak on your trade. I love that, and so I'm looking forward to us having our schedules match up so that you can be on the panel. Gary B., where would you put the alleged killer BK on the scale? I think he said he would have put him about 16. I'm not sure. Is that what you said, Dr. Brucato? Misinformation and disinformation are taking over. You're right. Yeah, that's what I thought you said. 16 under the mastermind category. Yes. I'll get there. I'll get there. It just I could only read so long, and my co-reader left, so I'm closing it out for now. I like to give people a little bit at a time. So if you haven't already picked up the book, you can get it in Kindle. You won't regret it. Well, I have some time off, so I'll read some more later on. All righty. Good deal. Y'all have a beautiful evening. Thank you so much for showing up. And be looking for the title as I continue to read Dr. Gary Brucato's book with Mike. I think he said what did he say his last name? White? I may be butchering that last name, but his co-author. And hopefully we'll have Gary B up here on panel before long because I'm interested a little. Y'all have a wonderful night. Maestro, cue that music. Till next time, everybody.